We'll have just a couple more questions. We'll switch gears and look ahead now to something that might be a month and a half off, but it will be almost upon us after the middle of next week because there's only 3 events to go now before the cutoff for the World Matchplay. And as I said, 2 of those 3 events will be at the beginning of next week as there's 2 Players' Championships in Germany on Monday and Tuesday after the conclusion of the World Cup of Darts, which also is in Germany. Currently, the last spot in the top 16 is held by James Wade. He's not guaranteed to get in if he drops out of the top 16, but he almost is certainly in. He could, though, drop into those Pro Tour spots, but it's a lot closer near the bottom as Steve Beaton, Raymond van Barneveld, Kim Huybrechts, and Brendan Dolan currently have the last 4 spots, but a bunch of players are within striking distance of them. Is there anyone you fancy who could move into those qualification spots?
Yes, it's going to be a really interesting start to next week with those 2 Players' Championship events. And as you mentioned there, James Wade could end up qualifying for the World Matchplay, not as a seed, as a Pro Tour qualifier. And that would probably be the first time that he's done that since he made his debut in the tournament back in 2006. He's been a mainstay in that top 16 for such a long time, but that position is under threat. And with the prize money that's gone up on the Pro Tour this year, there's so much more to play for, and perhaps there are more players looking at that race to the match play going, you know what, I've still got a chance here if I can put together a good run next week, or if they're playing in that last Euro Tour before the cut-off, they've got a shot. And I think at the moment, I believe we've got just the 2 debutants in that provisional field so far for Blackpool. That is Josh Rock, who's top of that list on the Pro Tour. I think he's had his Blackpool B&B booked for months now. I wouldn't blame him. And the other one, Mike De Decker, that run to the final in one of the Players' Championships a few weeks ago has propelled him up to number 12 on those Pro Tour spots. And he's not going to be in that Euro Tour, the last event before the cut-off, but 42 grand. I think he's around 7 grand clear of number 17. It is going to take something special for him now to drop those 5 places. I'm not saying he's guaranteed, but I think 12 upwards, they're in. Then you've got Steve Beaton, Raymond van Barneveld, Kim Huybrechts, Brendan Dolan, and from players that are looking to make their debuts at the Winter Gardens, you've got 4 players there that have got a lot of appearances between them. I think you've got Dolan's on 8, Huybrechts 8, Van Barneveld, who's not been in it since 2018, he's been in it 12 times, and Steve Beaton, he had that long consecutive run. He's been in 21 World Match Plays, not been in it since 2020, and I think Steve Beaton is in the spots at the moment, but he's someone that a lot of darts fans want to see him get in that field, don't they? Not just Dan Dawson, all of the adoring fans for the Bronze Adonis, they want to see him get back to that World Match Play because it's been a difficult last few years for him. He's been closer towards the bottom end of the top 64 than towards the top 32, and there's been talk of, is this going to be his last year on the tour? He's been on our show and said that Q School, that's never going to be on his radar. If he drops off the tour, that's going to be it in terms of his professional status in the game. We want a few more years of him playing on the tour for now anyway. And if I'm looking at players outside of that top 16, if you're looking at the stats, players in and around the mix for those last few spots, I don't think many are playing better than Jim Williams. And looking at it, he is 6 grand off. But you look at the Players' Championship averages for this year, and he is 16th on that list. 95.92 is the average, and it's not equated to a lot of deep runs like you'd expect. I think he's had 1 quarter final. There's quite a few last 32 scattered in there as well. But we've got to add that he's missed a few events. I think he's missed 1 Players' Championship. He's pulled out of a Euro Tour a few months ago for personal reasons. And if he'd have played in those 2 events, that gap could have been a lot closer. But as things stand, he's still got a chance. He's going to be in those 2 Players' Championships. He's going to be in that last Euro Tour event. And if just focusing on those floor events, if you're averaging close to 96 over 25 games on the floor, you're going to give yourself every chance of going far on one of those days. And we know on the floor he can win titles. He won a title last year, his first year on the tour. So for me, if I'm looking at someone, I think Jim Williams could be the one to pick out there. And just lastly, Willie O'Connor, someone that we spoke about recently, not been in the best of form. And it's crazy to think that he's never made the match play still. But if he could find something next week, again, someone that's going to be in that last Euro Tour, that could just be enough to squeeze him in as well.
Yeah, that's I mean, that's the thing. Most of the players, other than Jim Williams, that are currently just outside, aren't really in the greatest of form. You mentioned Jim Williams is 16th in averages. Willie O'Connor this year is 86th. Simon Whitlock is 51st. And of those players, of the next 5 that are currently outside, those are the 3 that will still have a chance at the last Euro Tour event at the end of the month, beginning of July, which means if you're Matters Razma, who's a little over 4,000 pounds back, or Riccardo Pietreko, who's a little under 6,000 pounds back, these are your last 2 chances, unless you get in off the reserve list, which is very unlikely that far down the Pro Tour order of merit. That means that the next couple days, those 2 days next week, I guess. By the time you're listening to this, it'll still be a few days off unless you decide to wait until Sunday to listen. But let's say you wait till Sunday, so the next couple days is accurate. Those were the last chance, or the last really good chance for many of these players. And if you're Matters Razma, as I said, it's a little over 4,000 pounds back. That means even if he makes a semifinal on one of the days, that's still not going to put him provisionally in the field. He's going to have to win a match the following day and hope that Brendan Dolan hasn't won a match on either days. That leaves a lot of work for those players to do. And even Jim Williams, you mentioned he's 6,000 pounds back. He is in the Euro Tour, but that 6,000 pounds back is including 1,000 pounds from making it to that Euro Tour event. That means he's going to have to outdo Brendan Dolan by a full, in essence, semifinal in the Euro Tour, or 2 quarterfinals in the Players' Championships, or semifinal at last 16 in the Players' Championships. He has to do that much better than Brendan Dolan to catch up to him. And Brendan Dolan will be in that Euro Tour event. Kim Huybrechts, the next person ahead of him, will be in that Euro Tour event. Raymond van Barneveld will also. Steve Beaton's the only player within striking distance who's not in the last Euro Tour event before the cutoff. That means that most of these players just are going to need to have a run of their lives, or at least of their season, if they're going to catch him. Whitlock is a little bit closer. He's only 2,000 pounds back. And while he's not playing as well as Jim Williams, 51st on averages, that might sound a little poor, but it also is more telling you just how good the standard is now. That's still an average of over 93. And there are some players right around him who are doing okay. You know who's less than a quarter of a point ahead of him in averages so far this year in Players' Championships? Michael Smith, the world number 1. So it's not like Whitlock's doing poorly. It's just the standard has gone up that much. But he still is 2,000 pounds back. That's a last 16, a board title behind the next person. 3,000 pounds behind Kim Huybrechts, who's won a title this year. It's going to be tough. And Jim Williams is playing the best of those chasing. Simon Whitlock is the one who's closest. I think those are the 2 who are most likely. But I don't think the field is going to change. I just have a feeling we have it set as it's going to end up. I think the players who are currently in will do enough to keep Whitlock, to keep O'Connor, to keep Williams, to keep anyone else at bay. Obviously, if Matt Campbell, if Keen Barry go and they win a title on Monday, that changes the conversation, and they're good enough to do so. But I think it's going to take something like that. It's going to take a player going through and winning a title to really shake this up. And I don't see the field changing from where it is right now.